Vice President Kashim Shettima is presiding over the 142nd National Economic Council meeting at the State House in Abuja. Some members of President Bola Tinubu's economic team are also attending the meeting. On Wednesday, the President's Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, said Tinubu would discuss the new national minimum wage with state governors at the meeting. Gbajabiamila disclosed this when he spoke in Kano while leading a high-power delegation to commiserate with Shettima over the demise of his mother-in-law. The meeting comes days after the Federal Executive Council on Tuesday stepped down the report of the Tripartite Committee on new national minimum wage down, citing the need for President Bola Tinubu to further consult with other stakeholders on the matter. The Nigeria's Governors Forum has reassured Nigerians and organized labor that ongoing negotiations will result in a better minimum wage. Now, this follows the governor's initial rejection of the federal government's proposal of 62,000 naira, citing concerns that some states would need to borrow funds to meet the proposed salaries. An emergency meeting was convened by the governors after the Federal Executive Council postponed the minimum wage discussion on Tuesday to allow President Bola Tinubu to conduct broader consultations. In a communique released after the emergency meeting, which extended into the early hours of Thursday, NGF Acting Director of Media, Hamed Salihu, stated that the forum discussed various national issues, including the new national minimum wage. And to unpack this, I'm joined by the former Vice President, Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Fidelis Edeh. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. It's a privilege.
Now, we understand that the Vice President is currently presiding over the NEC meeting, and part of the discussion will be the new minimum wage. What are your thoughts as to the outcome of this meeting?
Well, it is sad that the colonial mentality of 1906 that brought into being Ordinance 16, master-servant relationship still operates. Is it not ironic and even a sad commentary that after negotiations, you now go and subject the product of a negotiation to just one tier or one arm? That is, the master will now meet to decide whether they will accept or not. That is not negotiation. That is imposition. I've always been clear on my position on this. It's either we are running democracy based on rule of law and the institutions that are authorized to deepen good governance and rule of law, or that we are still operating under military dictates, no matter how you try to define those in government. It is simple. Negotiation means parties meeting to agree. But when parties meet and agree, whatever comes out, you say is a recommendation. You now take it to another level where those, the simple question one will ask in this meeting that is being presided over by the Vice President, is the trade union representing the employees, are they part of it? The answer is no. So as long as I'm concerned, this is a violation of the 1999 Constitution in terms of the rule of law.
Okay, yeah.
It is also...
Comrade, just to get your perspective here, one of the arguments presented is that other states may need to borrow if they agree to a certain amount of minimum wage. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, people are saying that with the current economic reality of Nigeria, we have inflation rising now to about 39%. And so there will be a struggle for states in Nigeria to pay, any amounts agreed. And so there should be a wider consultation by the federal government with other stakeholders. What do you make of that analogy?
We are not dealing with static states here. Because at the end of the day, the question will be, what is the ratio you are spending on the other items? But I've always held the point that it is not minimum wage that is an issue. Even by the question you have asked, wouldn't it be good we find out what the states are spending on recurrence and be able to graduate it in terms of percentage When you now say states will borrow to pay minimum wage, what is the number of servants that are in the state employment? Because when we talk about minimum wage, people come from the perspective as if you are paying citizens of particular states certain amount. You are talking about those employees that are not of those that are the population of a particular state. These are things we have to get through. So why is it that it's only when the minimum wage comes up that people begin to talk about the states not being able to pay? If we are now trying to say that states should live according to their means, after the election, tell me states that didn't buy new vehicles for legislators, governors that didn't change their vehicles, governors that are not refurbishing, governors that you do not have the office of the first lady. I don't even like discussing these things as if one is so envious of what the governors are doing. But I'm trying to say, if you are trying to determine minimum wage, the first question would be, the 30,000 that was in operation, how many states were paying? I'm from Enugu State. I can see that there are standing areas of pension and gratuity running into 8 years. And we are just talking about minimum wage for a tiny aspect of civil servants. That is the core civil servants that are paid from the treasury, that are not inclusive of local government or primary school teachers. So it's not just enough people talk about inflation, in fact, the states, if they say they cannot pay, let us see the balance sheet of what they are spending so that we will know what is going where.
Now, talking about balance sheet.
This is what I made the point that we are still operating is the master-servant orientation that was enacted in 1906.
Now, let's talk solutions
Nigeria
here.
Is a
if I may,
is not a
if I may, Comrade Edeh, you talked about the existing minimum wage of 30,000 naira. I was just wondering, looking at the escalating prices of goods and services, which we currently have in Nigeria, and we understand how the purchasing power of the average Nigerian has dwindled. If you were to recommend, how much would you recommend as enough or fair enough as minimum wage?
That is one thing I will never fall into. Because if we want to be comprehensive, the first thing we'll have to talk about is why is it Nigeria don't have a wage policy? You see, minimum wage ought to derive from a national wage policy. Can you begin to talk about what is happening in the state and National Assembly? Let us be holistic. Let us be comprehensive. And when we are talking, what is the place of the unemployed? What is the place of the aged? Let's look at Section 16 of the Constitution that talked about that the national wealth of this country should be distributed in a manner that it is not concentrated in the hands of few. So if I want to now say pay 100,000, I am only talking about 100,000 to a tiny of those who are lucky to have employment. I don't fall into that kind of cheap talk. What we are saying is that if government means well, let government evolve a national wage that everybody can relate with. So that when you are saying you cannot pay 60,000 in a state,
well, that's a fine place to wrap up. Since we lost connection with our guest, our comrade Fidelis Edeh, who is the former Vice President for Nigeria Labour Congress. We thank him so much for his thoughts on the news.